was going to say ladies and gentlemen, but ladies and gentlemen, how fantastic! Thank you for being here this afternoon. This is our intro to acting class, and it's Natalie performed her monologues before, but because of her internship, she had to leave earlier. So a bevy of sophomores have taken over the first act of River Anthology. They've worked really hard. They've come up with their own versions of songs and their own awesome choreography, and I hope you enjoy yourself. You are allowed to laugh and absolutely listen and enjoy. Spoon River.
He's gone away for to stay a little while, but is coming back if he goes 10,000 miles. But who will buy my shoes? And who will glove my hand? And who will kiss my ruby lips when he is gone? Look away, over yonder. Where are Elmer, Herman, Bert, Tom, and Charlie? The weak of will, the strong of arm, the clown,
kites and toys with clocks and telephones with cans and string. I played the cornet and painted pictures, modeled a play, and took the part of the villain in the opera room. And then at 21 I married and had to live. And so to live, I learned the trade of making watches and kept the jewelry store on the square. Thinking, 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 thinking. Not of business, but of the engine I studied the calculus to build. And all of Spoon River watched and waited to see it work, but it never worked. A few kind souls believed my genius was somehow hampered by the store. It wasn't true. The truth was this. I didn't have the brains.
I belong to the church and to the party of prohibition. And the villagers thought I died of eating watermelon. In truth, I had cirrhosis of the liver. Forever known for 30 years, I slipped behind a partition prescription in Trader's drugstore and poured myself a generous drink from the bottle marked Spiritus Fermenti. Only the chemist can tell, and not always the chemist, what will result from compounding fluids or solids, and who can tell how men and women will interact on each other, or what children will result. There were Benjamin Pantier and his wife, good in themselves but evil towards each other. He oxygen, she hydrogen. Their son, a devastating fire.
Together in his grave lay Benjamin Pantier attorney at law, and Nick, his dog, constant companion, solace and friend. Down the great road, friends, children, men and women, passing one by one out of life, left me till I was alone, with Nick for partner, bedfellow, comrade, and drink. In the morning light, I knew aspiration and saw glory. Then she, who survived me, snared my soul with a snare which bled me to death. Till I, strong of will, lay broken and different, living with Nick in a room back of the dingy office.
I know that he told that I snared his soul with a
children, and had no time to write. It was all over with me anyway, when I ran the needle in my hand while washing the baby's things, and died of lockjaw and ironical death. Hear me, ambitious souls, sex is the curse of life. still. So she hid in the house and sent out rumors as if it were going to happen to her. And all went well, and the child was born. They were so kind to me. I was the only child of Francis Harris of Virginia and Tom Green of Kentucky, a valiant and honorable blood wolf. From my mother, I inherited vivacity, fancy, language. And from my father, will, judgment, logic. All honor to them for what service I was to the people. But at political rallies, when sitters-by thought I was crying at the eloquence of Hamilton Green, that was not it. No, I wanted to say, that's my son! That's my son!
I was sick. More than that, I was mad. The crooked police and the crooked game club. So I wrote to the chief of police at Peoria. I am here in my girlhood home, and Spoon River gradually wasting away. But help take me. I killed the son of the merchant prince and Madame Louise. And the papers that say he killed himself in his home while cleaning a hunting gun lied like the gun to hush up the scandal. More graphic advertising. In my room, I shot him at Madame Louise because he knocked me down when I said that in spite of all the money he had, I'd see my lover that night.
I, born in Weimar, of a mother who was French, and to her father, a most learned professor, became a dancer known as Ruspitsonia. All up and down the boulevards of Paris, mistress bedtimes with sundry dukes and counts, and later performers and poets, at 40 years passé, I sought New York and met old passion to come around the world. Red-faced and pale, though turned his 16th year, returning after having sold a shipload of cattle in the German city Hamburg. He brought me to Spoon River, and we lived here for 20 years. They thought we were married. This oak tree near me is the favorite haunt of blue jays, chattering all day. And why not? For my very guest is laughing, for thinking of this humorous thing called life.
When my mustache grew and my hair was black, and I wore tight trousers and a diamond stud, I was an excellent parts and took many a trick. But when the gray hairs began to appear, lo, a new generation of girls laughed at me. Not fearing me, and I had the more exciting adventures, where I was all the Shaka Harbor's devil, but only draggy affairs warmed over affairs of other days and other men. And time went on until I lived at Mayor's restaurant, partaking of short orders. Gray and tidy, to describe it world Dante. There's a mighty shaker, Dante, who sings of one named Beatrice. And I see now the force that made him great drove me to the dregs of life.
saw myself in the glass, my face like a sock
See me fall on the floor in a heap through a broken vein in my head. Now I know
featured food, and the smell of the trench just back of the tent where the soldiers went to empty themselves. And there are the whores who followed us, full of syphilis, and beastly acts between ourselves or alone. With bullying, hated, degradation among us, with days of loathing and nights of fear to the hour of the charge, through steaming swamps following the flag, till at last I fell with a scream, shot through the guts. Now there's a flag over me in Spoon River. A flag. A flag.
I was only 8 years old, and before I knew what it meant, I had no words for it, except that I was frightened and told my mother, and that my father, who got a pistol, would have killed Charlie, who was a big boy, 15 years old, except for his mother. Nevertheless, the story clung to me. But the man who married me, a widower of 35, was a newcomer and never heard it, till 2 years after we were married. And he considered himself cheated. And the town agreed that I was not really a virgin. Well, he deserted me, and I died the following winter.
I'll give to you a paper of pens to show you how our love begins. If you will marry me, if you will marry me.
I'll not accept the paper pin to show me how our love begins. I'll not marry you. I'll not marry you.
I'll give to you the keys to my heart so you can lock and never part. If you will marry me, if you will marry me.
I'll not accept the keys to your heart so that we can lock and never part. No, I'll not marry you. I'll not marry you.
I'll give to you the key to my chest so you can have money at your request. If you will marry me, if you will marry me.
I'll accept the keys to your chest so that I can have money at my request. Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll marry you. She loved me. Oh, how she loved me. I never had a chance to escape from the moment she first saw me. But then I thought she might prove her mortality and let me out, or she might divorce me. But you died and I resigned. I then ran away here in the park. But she never complained. She said all would be well and that I would return. And I did return. I told her that while taking a row in a boat, I'd been captured near Van Buren Street by pirates on Lake Michigan, kept in chains so I could not write her. She cried and kissed me and said it was cruel, outrageous, and inhumane. I then concluded our marriage was a divine dispensation that could not be resolved other than by death. I was right. He ran away and was gone for a year. When he came home, he told me the silly story of being kidnapped by pirates on Lake Michigan and kept in chains so he could not write me. I pretended to believe it, though I knew very well what he was doing, and that he met the milliner, Mrs. Williams, now and then when she went to the city to buy goods, as she said. But a promise is a promise, and marriage is marriage, and out of respect for my own character, I refused to be drawn into a divorce by the scheme of a husband who had merely grown tired of his marital vow and duty.
If you in the village thought that my work was a good one, who closed the saloons and stopped all playing at cards, and held old Daisy Fraser before Justice Arnett, why do you let the milliner's daughter Dora and worthless son of Benjamin Pantier nightly make my grave their unholy pillow? The white man played all sorts of jokes on me. fish I had caught. When Burr Robbins and Circus came to town, they got the ringmaster to let a tame leopard into the ring and made me believe that I was whipping a wild beast like Samson when I, for an offer of $50, dragged him out to his cage. One time, I walked into my blacksmith shop and shook as I saw horseshoes crumbling across the floor as if alive. Walter Simmons had put a magnet under a barrel of water. Yet every one of you white men was fooled about fish and about leopards too. And you didn't know any more than the horseshoes did what brought you to the Spoon River.